Hey guys, this is part 2 of Mrs. Clarke's Friday lesson. So, we've defined these terms, and the next step is to actually go looking for evidence to start formulating your argument. Do you think Golding was right? Do you think he was wrong? Or do you think he was partially right? So, as you read, you're going to be reading the articles and you're going to be highlighting any information that will help you answer the question, are human beings naturally evil and or savage, as Golding claims? So as you read, you're going to highlight anything that will help you answer that question. And then in the margins, you're going to write an explanation of how the highlighted information helps you answer that question. You can see, and I'll let you read through on your own, how you're going to be graded for your annotations. And if you flip the page, you're going to see that there is a rubric for effective annotations. If you want full credit, you want your annotations to look like this. You want to highlight the stuff that's important to your prompt, and then make sure that you have meaningful annotations in the margins. So I'm going to do some with you, just so you can see what I'm looking for. Let's go ahead and turn to page 3, which is the first article. Before we read this article, you'll want to pause this video and watch the little background video about the Chilean miners, which is in today's Canvas announcement. So go ahead and pause this video right now. Hey, welcome back. So you saw that in 2010, I believe it was, 33 Chilean miners were trapped under the ground for close to 2 months. This is kind of a similar scenario to the boys who were on the island in Lord of the Flies. The difference is that these were grown men and not children, and also there was a pretty big difference in that they did, after a couple weeks, get contact with the outside world and were able to communicate with them, and they knew that they were going to be saved. So that was a little different than the boys on the island who didn't know for sure whether or not they were going to be saved and didn't have any contact with the outside world. But we're going to take a look and see how these 33 men behaved when they were underground, and see if there's any evidence in here that will prove Golding right, wrong, or just partially right. So let's go ahead and get your highlighters ready. We'll read and highlight together. Chile miners rescued foreman Luis Ursua's first interview. Exclusive. Leaders said his secret for keeping men bonded was democracy, but others mentioned fears of death and cannibalism. Luis Ursua stands with Chile's President Sebastián Piñera. Speaking from a hospital bed at the San Jose mine, shift foreman Luis Ursua, the man who kept the Chilean miners alive for 2 months, said his secret for keeping the men bonded and focused on survival was majority decision making. Okay, I'm going to stop and I'm going to highlight this. I think it's really interesting that while they were underground, these men decided to form a kind of democracy, and they voted on everything, and then seemingly they agreed on whatever was voted on, and that seems pretty civilized. So I'm going to say the fact, I'm going to highlight it and then write in the annotations, the fact that the men were able to form a working democracy even when they thought they might die proves that men can be good and civil. Maybe Golding was wrong. Maybe this proves that Golding was wrong. So I'm going to write this in my margins because I want my good annotations for every highlight. And I'm always going to be thinking, does this evidence prove Golding right? Does this evidence prove Golding wrong? Or does it show that he's right some of the time or in certain situations. Okay, let's keep reading. You just have to speak the truth and believe in democracy, said Urzua, his eyes hidden behind black glasses. As nurses, doctors, and psychologists rushed around him in a chaotic scene, the world's most famous foreman sat in bed, his arms folded across a thick chest, and spoke about making tough decisions 700 meters below ground when all hope seemed lost. Everything was voted on. We were 33 men, so 16 plus 1 was a majority. However, as the first accounts of life for the trapped miners emerge, a complicated picture of squabbles, disagreements, and even physical confrontation suggests that the official version may be rather sanitized. I think that's really interesting, this whole passage right here, because the fact that there may have been disagreements and physical confrontations suggests that maybe eventually these grown men, if they had stayed underneath for longer without contact with life above ground, maybe they would have eventually become like the boys on the island, and they would have eventually become even more violent and even more savage as they were fighting for survival. So this information may prove Golding right. If the men had been trapped underground for longer, would they have become like Jack and the others, savage and violent? And I'm just going to leave that comment there. And keep reading. Like a ship's captain, 54-year-old Urzua was the last to leave after 70 days trapped below the Atacama Desert. He was winched to the surface shortly before 10 p.m. local time yesterday amid extraordinary scenes of emotion and celebration across Chile. I actually think this is interesting. Even though it's not talking about the Chilean miners, it does show what the rest of the country and even the rest of the world was doing while they were trapped underground. They were watching and they were praying and they were cheering for and hoping for the men's survival, which I think reflects the goodness in each human being. So I'm going to say as much. This information reveals how good people can be. They hope for and pray for others' well-being. So maybe that is a little bit of information that proves Golding wrong, that actually maybe we're all just really good. All right, keep reading. President Sebastián Piñera greeted him with tears in his eyes. You're not the same after this, and neither are we, Piñera told him. We will never forget this. The government hailed the men as models of solidarity, but in a separate interview with The Guardian, Richard Villarreal, another member of Los 33, said the truth was not so simple. There was the waiting for death, the hopelessness, the petty squabbles, and the nagging, unspoken fear of cannibalism. I think that's very interesting. Now we're getting two sides of the story. Now we're getting another miner saying, actually, things were pretty dark under there. And while they were waiting to die, or while they thought they might die, they were hopeless. They had petty squabbles. And then every one of them, according to this miner, Villarreal, was thinking about maybe having to eat one of the other miners, which is pretty savage if you think about it. It's definitely not something we do in a civilized society. So this maybe says, yep, the men can become like the boys in Lord of the Flies, but really they were under a lot of pressure. They thought they would die. So maybe it's just in survival situations. So maybe this information helps qualify Golding's claim. The men, and I'm going to write that here, the men were in a survival situation when they lost hope, became physically aggressive, and began to think about cannibalism. Maybe mankind only becomes savage when fighting for survival. Oops. Anyway, you can see how I've written my comments off to the side next to everything that I highlighted, and you can see how I highlighted anything and everything that might help me decide whether Golding was right, wrong, or if he was just right in certain circumstances. So you're going to continue to do this on your own, or you can work with your seat partner. You're going to finish this first article about the Chilean miners, and then you're also going to read the second article about the Chilean miners, which starts on page 6 and goes to page 9. So I'd like you to read both of the Chilean miner articles, annotate them for evidence proving that Golding was right, wrong, or that he was partially right, or sometimes right. And then highlighting your evidence and then writing in the margins next to the evidence what that evidence might prove. Good luck, and I hope I will see you next week.